It's Monday, January 6th, 2025. Why I really don't care who is House Speaker. We're learning more disturbing facts about the New Orleans bomber and why everybody is wrong on the H1B debate, except for me, of course, next on the AM Update. Well, it's good to be back. Let's get right to it. On Friday, House Speaker Mike Johnson retained his seat as Speaker of the House. Then in the final tally, Johnson received 218 votes, the bare minimum to secure the speakership. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries received 215 votes. 7 Republicans, including Representative Chip Roy of Texas, initially skipped out on the election, later changing their vote to Johnson. 3 Republicans initially voted for other members entirely. Republican Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina voted for Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio. Representative Keith Self of Texas voted for Representative Byron Donalds of Florida. Those 2 congressmen eventually changed their votes to Johnson. Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky was the only member in the final tally who voted against Johnson, and opting instead for House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. Some of those House Freedom Caucus members, like the aforementioned Chip Roy, penned a letter after the vote explaining why they changed their vote to Johnson. Essentially, in Chip Roy's word and others who signed on to that letter, they were afraid that Democrats would try to play games with the certification of Donald Trump's election victory, and so it was important to make sure that they actually had their House in order for today's certification. After the Speaker vote, Hakeem Jeffries, the so-called minority leader, who is just basically the de facto House Speaker, had this to say:
"The American dream possible. We will fight hard for the freedom to vote."
Yes, you will fart hard for the freedom to vote, House Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. Here's how and why I don't really care who the House Speaker is. Congress is absolutely broken. It's absolutely broken. I think you have to begin your analysis there. As Jesse Kelly said over the weekend, it's a bad tree trying to bear bad fruit. It can't be good. So while I appreciate the efforts of people like Chip Roy and Thomas Massie this time around, trying to at least push for the best possible solution, for whatever reason, Thomas Massie thought that Tom Emmer would be able to get 218 votes and would be an upgrade from Mike Johnson. I appreciate those efforts. Not going to knock you, not going to get in your way, certainly not going to say that you need to be primaried for expecting and trying to demand better of this body. But it's a bad tree, and it cannot bear good fruit right now. So if I were in their positions, I just would have said, let's make sure we get the election certified, hope for the best in this body, but probably expecting not too much. Now, that's not to say that Mike Johnson hasn't been a supreme disappointment, really a pushover, wilts at the faintest sign of pushback. Yes, that's true. But who else could get 218 votes and not be that way? Thomas Massie thought it was Tom Emmer. I don't know. Maybe it would have been. Let's just get the show on the road. So again, Congress, that's not to say that maybe someday it can't be reformed. It's in bad shape. It's a bad tree bearing bad fruit. Now here's this. The driver who killed 14 people in an ISIS-inspired vehicular attack in New Orleans used a very rare explosive compound in 2 homemade bombs that did not detonate. That's according to 2 senior law enforcement officials telling NBC News. The explosive had never been used in a U.S. terrorist attack or incident, nor in a European one. The key question for investigators is how Shamsuddin Jabbar, the attacker, learned about the explosive and how he managed to produce it. Neither of the homemade devices exploded, and it remains unclear whether the failure was due to a malfunction, lack of activation, or another issue. Jabbar planned to use a transmitter to detonate 2 bombs, which were placed in coolers. The FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives said in a joint statement Friday the 2 explosive devices were placed on Bourbon Street, which Jabbar later turned into a scene of devastation. That is a worrying factoid, that somebody who was actually in the United States, a former Army serviceman, was able to be radicalized. Well, it's not really radicalization. It's just Islam itself. It's got a long and storied history of violence against the infidel. He was able to get a hold of rare explosive material that's never been used in attacks in Europe or the United States, and he did all of this under the radar. That is very concerning indeed. Another concerning story, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow, and it's been driving me nuts, is the Las Vegas bomber. Nothing adds up there. That's going to be for tomorrow. A judge in the hush money case against President-elect Donald Trump announced Friday his sentencing date and hinted he would not face any jail time. Judge Juan Merchan said Trump would be sentenced on January 10th, about a week before the inauguration, but signaled that he would issue a quote-unquote unconditional discharge that would preclude jail time, probation, or a fine. The judge said that the interests of justice would only be served by quote-unquote bringing finality to this matter. Translation, Judge Merchan, this corrupt judge who oversaw the specious so-called hush money case against Donald Trump, he saw the writing on the wall. He knew he was going to get spanked in the appellate courts, and so he's trying to make it look like he took this entire case seriously the whole time. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Biden bestowed woke Democrat mega donor George Soros with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Soros, the 94-year-old, was among 19 people chosen to receive the nation's highest civilian honor at the White House, a group that included U2 frontman Bono, actor Denzel Washington, and former Senator and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. So, in one case, there's a corrupt judge still after Donald Trump won the election trying to sentence, quote-unquote, sentence Donald Trump without any jail time or any other fines or penalties. Meanwhile, at the White House, one of the most evil people on this planet, George Soros, along with one of the most evil people, Americans of the past 20 years, Hillary Clinton, got bestowed the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So, if that's not a commentary in and of itself of the dichotomy play in the United States right now, I don't know what is. D.C. U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves announced last week he will resign before President-elect Donald Trump retakes the White House, likely avoiding an involuntary departure after controversial decisions not to criminally charge first son Hunter Biden and most local crimes. Graves said in a statement, quote, "Serving as the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia has been the honor of a lifetime." Yes, I bet it has. Graves was at the center of numerous controversies, including allegedly covering for the first family and also choosing not to prosecute a large share of people arrested in D.C. during a violent crime wave early in his tenure. He broadly confirmed last year the allegations of IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley that he declined to partner with Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss on tax charges against Hunter Biden, allowing for the statutes of limitation to bar charges for some years of non-payment during his dad's vice presidency. The Biden-nominated U.S. Attorney argued during congressional testimony that such cooperation rarely happens because, quote, "there is no way to get up to speed on everything." So the cockroaches are running from the daylight. Hopefully this is what that means. Matthew Graves, corrupt U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., for the District of Columbia. He's hitting the breeze before Donald Trump takes office. Hey, I want to stop here and just let you know I appreciate each and every one of you listening. I appreciate the time off. I really needed a break. That this kind of break was a couple of weeks off, starting to get burnt out quite a little bit. And the last Christmas vacation, I had like 10 big projects I needed to do around the house, and I felt more burned out going out of that break and trying to do this podcast during that break than I did going in. So I just needed some peace and quiet, at least from the airwaves for a little while, and I appreciate you understanding. Hey, I want to tell you too, I've got a new Instagram page. It's the same handle as you find on X, at Real AM Update on Instagram. You can find some Instagram-specific content. Going to be sharing some stories just about my family and things of that nature, some reposts, some memes. You can follow me at Real AM Update on Instagram. Also on X, every single Tuesday this year, we're going to have our question of the week, soliciting feedback that I'll talk about for our air analysis update on Thursdays. So take a look out, and if you're not following me on X yet, please do so at Real AM Update on X. Look for the poll question of the week every Tuesday on X. Also, finally, just want to say one more thing. If you like this and you want the ad-free AM Update experience, that's available for Apple Podcast subscribers at the $5 a month level. We appreciate each and every one of our subscribers. And if you subscribe, you also get Bella and I's No Suck Saturday just for subscribers every Saturday that we possibly can. Finally, if you like this podcast but don't want to subscribe, would you consider giving me a 5-star review on your platform of choice? I really appreciate each and every one of you who do those especially. And now on with the Monday edition. Federal law enforcement agencies responding to reports of 2 pipe bombs in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021 were guilty of, quote, egregious safety and security failures for not securing the crime scenes and allowing the House Speaker and Vice President-elect to come within feet of one of the devices. That's according to a U.S. House of Representatives investigation. An interim report of the House Judiciary Committee and the Committee on House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight did not address some major topics, however, including how CCTV security cameras were turned away from one crime scene and whether the pipe bombs could have been planted on January 6th, not January 5th, as the FBI has long maintained. The report showed that the FBI amassed 105 million data points in the case, including on the gray-hooded person thought to have planted the bombs on January 5th, and yet it hasn't identified the person or made any arrests 4 years later. The FBI did come out late last week and say, this is a bombshell. They estimate that suspect captured on CCTV is 5'7" tall. Just a bombshell. Breakthrough investigation. 4 years, the power and weight of the United States federal government has been able to deduce that the pipe bomber, alleged, who was able to place an explosive device within feet of the vice president-elect, all they've been able to come up with in 4 years is an approximation on the suspect's height. And this interim report that I just spoke of basically says the FBI has no idea what they're doing. Well, I think they know what they're doing. I think they know what they're doing because I think they did it, or at least somebody connected with the FBI. Because this, you can track down. I remember going to Florida in January of 2021. I think it was, maybe it was January of 2022, and I saw billboards in Florida, in the Orlando area, with people's faces, January 6th suspects' faces on billboards for wanted signs. They were able to move heaven and earth to arrest grandmas for taking selfies at the Capitol. And all we've gotten in 4 years about this alleged pipe bomber, he might be 5'7". If you believe that they're actually doing any work on this and that they weren't involved on some level and how this was able to go down, you must have a herd of unicorns at home. Costco has urged its shareholders to vote against the push to limit the major retailer's commitment to DEI after receiving a proposal about striking, quote-unquote, discriminatory practices. The National Center for Public Policy Research requested that Costco publish a report about the risks the company could face by maintaining its current DEI policies. The proposal stated, quote, it's clear DEI holds litigation, reputational, and financial risks to the company and therefore financial risks to the shareholders. And yet Costco still has such a program, though it was apprehensive enough to recognize this as it recently and quietly rebranded its DEI program to People and Communities. That's according to the proposal met before shareholders to try to nix and strike Costco's DEI program. Costco said that request, quote, is simply inflicting burdens on companies with their challenges to long-standing programs. Costco said in a statement, our board has considered this proposal and believes that our commitment to an enterprise rooted in respect and inclusion is appropriate and necessary. So Costco, one of big corporations, bucking the recent trend of other large corporations, either nixing or completely disbanding, rebranding their DEI, or I like to call it DIE programs. Meanwhile, in my home state of Iowa, the University of Iowa announced it's going to close its Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies department as public universities in the state continue to respond to a changing DIE landscape. The University of Iowa announced in a press release, quote, under the proposed plan, the college would close the departments of American Studies and Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies, as well as the current majors in American Studies and Social Justice, which have fewer than 60 students combined, and create a new major in Social and Cultural Analysis. The decision comes after Iowa's State Board of Regents approved 10 recommendations to scale back diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the Hawkeye State. The announcement from the University of Iowa revealed that the proposal would go into effect on July 1st of this year if it is successfully approved in February at the Board of Regents meeting. So a tale of two different paths on the DEI or DIE landscape. Costco says, yes, give me some more discrimination against white people. University of Iowa says there's no market for gender and sexuality departments at our state university. So again, a mixed bag. Overall, the momentum is on the side of nixing these just disastrous and really corrupt DEI programs, both in academia and in the corporate world. And now here's this. It appears that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Castro is on thin ice as his prime ministership seems to be hitting a brick wall. The man poised to unseat him seems to be Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who spoke to the Daily Wire's Jordan Peterson recently about what's actually going on in Canadian politics.
How do you feel about the probability that if the Conservatives in Canada take power, that they'll be enticed into this global utopian delusion that seems to have enveloped so many leaders, kind of regardless of their political stripe? What do you think, if anything, can inoculate you or has inoculated you against that?
I know better.
Well, elaborate. What do you mean?
I'm not going to do that. And it will be hard because the temptation will be, this is the mistake that conservative parties around the world have made countless times. They think, well, anybody who's got a conservative mindset is already voting for me, so I can go off and chase the ideas of my political opponents, and then everyone will love me because I'll have the conservatives due to the fact that I have the name conservative. And then I'll have all these other people because I've embraced their contrary direction. And in the short term, it works because you manage to have all of these people under, and all of the different political ideologies captured in one tent. But the problem happens when the policies are a disaster. And then people wake up and go, oh my God, my taxes are now up. The inflation is out of control. The deficit is spiraling. There's crime on the streets. So does the temptation exist to try and take on the political policies of the socialists in the short term? Sure, but it's one that I will fiercely resist because I know that by the fourth year of my mandate, people would be enraged because their lives would be even worse. So it will be tough, though. Like, it's going to be a trade-off.
See the temptation. I mean, I think many leaders fall prey to the temptation.
That is Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre talking to the Daily Wire's Jordan Peterson about the state of play in Canadian politics. That's going to be a story definitely worth following early this year. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. I want to talk about the H1B debate that erupted really on Christmas Day over the break. So to give you a little bit of a background, I believe this was initially kicked off by Elon Musk stating his support for H1B visas, which are supposed to be work visas for foreigners who are highly skilled in a very specific task. That's the general idea. Of course, they've been used and abused by giant corporations, essentially seeing foreigners as chattel labor, replacing American labor. It's really corrupt at its core. It really is. But Elon Musk expressed on some level some support for H1B, which of course flies in the face of the expectation, though not, it's really important. I mean, Donald Trump campaigned on legal immigration. He did campaign on that, but it flies in the face of the expectations of many of his supporters. Then Vivek Ramaswamy, so these are the two Doge guys, Vivek Ramaswamy poured gasoline on that fire in a lengthy post. He essentially said that Americans are lazy and we need to be replaced. Now, he said that American culture is to blame here, and he's correct in that, but his solution was basically to say Americans therefore need to be replaced with people who actually want to be Americans more than Americans do. It's just an evil and corrupt thing. So I want to make something very clear off the bat here. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy I'm not sure, I think Elon maybe has changed his mind after this debate quite a little bit, but Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy were wrong. That's just the wrong thing. Never, ever, ever is the solution to American cultural problem to replace Americans. All right? They're wrong about that. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing that I want to say to color the rest of this conversation. Now, I saw Elon Musk engaging in this debate in a very, very rough and rowdy way. He used some very colorful language. In fact, at one point, somebody responding to him, critical of Elon's take on H1B, Elon responded to him by saying he could go F himself right in the face. Now, that is just beyond the pale. That's beyond the pale. I want to talk about that in a little bit, though. Here's why I think Elon Musk, and maybe to a lesser extent Vivek Ramaswamy, could have some legit reasons, however, for wanting more H1B immigration, H1B visas. Elon Musk is the dude who coined the phrase the woke mind virus and how it needs to be destroyed. Now, do you think companies like SpaceX, Tesla, X even, where he wrote all of these thoughts, do you think that they're hiring non-college educated people? No, they're not, unless it's for a position of janitor. So do you think of any person, a guy with a net worth approaching $500 billion, do you think of any person who would have an up-close look at the decline and decay of American culture, particularly as it comes out of academia? Do you think there's anybody who would have a clearer look at that than Elon Musk and think, hey, we have to get people in. I have to have people who are willing to work and work a lot. And if I have to find those through H1B visas, then that's where I'm going to go. These guys, especially Elon Musk, is a titan of industry. He thinks only, for better or worse, he thinks only in terms of efficiency, only in terms of most bang for the buck. You don't have a net worth of $500 billion by thinking, hey, how can I go and do things the least efficient way possible? You don't do that. So do I think he has a legit reason from his unique position that a lot of us, a perspective that a lot of us probably aren't privy to? Does he have a legit, though not good, reason for wanting H1B visas? Yeah, I think he does. He's still wrong, but I think he might have a legit reason, having seen what academia in the United States produces with a bunch of, quite frankly, especially in my generation, the millennial generation, lazy individuals. Yeah, I think he probably has a unique perspective that probably informs why he, at least initially, wanted more H1B visas. Now, in fairness to him, he did come back a little bit later and say, hey, maybe a way to fix the H1B visa program is to raise the minimum wage for H1B to like $300,000. That way 7-Eleven can't have somebody from India come in for $60,000 a year to run their gas station. That's a good idea. I think that would fix a lot of the problems with the broken H1B system. So yeah, Elon and Vivek are wrong about H1B. It's never a good idea to replace Americans, even if those Americans are lazy, with other people, foreigners from around the country. Focus on the root issues. Why are Americans unwilling to work a job at a certain price point? What's the underlying cause of that? Fix that before you start trying to replace Americans. Elon Musk might have some legitimate reasons why he wants more H1B visas for his businesses. He's still wrong, but they might be legitimate reasons. And finally, I want to say this as well. Disagree with Elon Musk all you want. Disagree with him all you want about this. But I saw far too many people making this personal with him, saying that he's a traitor, he's a backstabber, he sold out. Even going the oddest route, making fun of what he probably has is a mild form of odd. I mean, there was just some nasty personal attacks. You can disagree with him all you want. Do not insult him. He is the man who, in my estimation, played the biggest role in making sure that Donald Trump even had a chance to win the last election with his purchase of X. An outlet for alternative narratives to develop, foment, and then get distributed across the political spectrum. And then he did yeoman's work in this election, funding efforts to get out the vote. Disagree with him all you want, but the personal attacks that I saw, notably from one Laura Looney Loomer, that's just beyond the pale. You know, that doesn't give Elon Musk the right to tell somebody to F themselves in the face. I mean, I guess he can. It's his platform. That's just disagree. These are good debates to have. And I'll just end with this. I think the H1B thing is not even a top 5 immigration issue when it's all said and done. And yet we were ripping each other's spleens out on Christmas Day over it. I think there's like 5: border security, deportation, making sure the cartels are dealt with, So there's 3 off the top of my head more important issues than H1B. That's not to say that H1B isn't an important issue, but that's where we are. So the last thing I want to say is this. Elon Musk kind of concluded this debate by saying he wants America to win. And he sees nixing H1B visas en masse as not actually being able to bring in the best and the brightest from around the world. He sees America falling behind if we're not able to do that. My response to that is this. I too want America to win. But what does it matter if America wins if Americans lose? If Americans get replaced by non-Americans? What does it matter if America wins if Americans lose? I think that's kind of where I fall and where America First, where most of MAGA falls. They too want America to win. But it doesn't matter if Americans lose. If they lose their livelihoods, their jobs, their sense of self-respect. America is not just an economic zone. It's people and it's a place. I think some of these titans of industry would do well to remember that. All right, that's it for this first episode back in 2025. Blessings to each of you. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.